right. Okay. So, thank you so much for making your time here to come tonight. I'm just going to put this down here somewhere. The very first question we always ask all entrepreneurs is, where were you born?
I was actually born on a farm in the Free State in 1967, and then my first 5 or 6 years I was in Stellenbosch. My father was with the university there, and then we moved to Pretoria. He was at Takis.
Okay.
And so since 1974 we lived in Pretoria.
Okay. 1974. And what was life like at the age of 3?
Very, very uncomplicated. No, at the age of 3, to be honest, I can't really remember. But I know from a young age, it sounds funny, but I was always interested in business. You know, I remember when I was still very young, if I walk into a cafe, I would try and think, how does this guy make money? What would I do different? Where would I put the chips, and where would I put this? And so I was always trying to think how somebody else, and even when somebody visited our house, a friend of my father, I would interrogate him, you know, how does he make money? Where does it? So it was always an interest.
It was an interest.
Yeah.
And did a lot of people did they, oh, cute little kid, you know, or did they actually talk to you and actually ask you?
You know what's funny? I was in Standard 4, grade 6 now, and those were the days when timeshare came out, and I made some money with. By that time I was 11 years old. I've bought and sold a car and 1 or 2 things, so I had enough to pay the deposit for timeshare. So I found this. I mean, at that stage there were only 4 timeshare hotels. It was the Umhlanga Cabanas, Umhlanga Sands, the Beacon Isle, and I can't remember the 4th one. So you had these weeks that you can buy. So I phoned somebody, and so this salesperson, you know, those were the days they came to your house and then they do the whole presentation. So I opened the door, but I was 10 or 11 years old. So the lady asked me, so where's your dad? So my dad came. I said, no, you must speak to him. He's the one that. And at the end, I did buy from her, so she was very surprised. It was frowned upon those days. I mean, you don't get kids that want to.
Yeah. Okay, so you started and founded Atterbury. Can you give me in 60 seconds what is Atterbury? Your elevator pitch.
Atterbury is a property development company. So we find a piece of land, we apply for a certain zoning, then we find a tenant, and then we build a building. And then on completion of the building, we try to keep it, but if we need money, we sell the building and we do another one. So over time, we've built up a portfolio. And Atterbury have actually built up 2 portfolios. The one was called At Fund, which we started in 2000, built it up till 2009. Which comprised of shopping centres. There was Woodlands, Clearwater Mall, Gardenwood Mall, Cape Gate was in there, a whole lot of shopping centres, Atterbury Value Mart. And then we wanted to list it, but Hyprop made us an offer, so we sold it to Hyprop.
Cool.
And then we did a second fund, which was called Attack. We started that in 2005, so the 2 overlapped a bit. The one focused on shopping centres and the other one with the rest. So we started Attack in 2005, and then we listed it in I think 2012 or 2013. So it was completely sold to the market, and we're busy with the same thing again. So we're busy finding land, building buildings, building up a portfolio. Where we need money, we sell some of the buildings, but the idea is again in 4 or 5 years that this portfolio will be listed or sold to a listed fund.
Okay. So I know you guys are behind the Mall of Africa. Actually. Just see this works. There it is. So there's my wife and I at the Mall of Africa doing a piece for the Property Wheel. So we've been following you around, trying to get you on the stage for a very long time. Anyway, so can you tell us? Because I know these are growth funds. So what is a growth fund?
You get two property funds. You get either a growth fund or income fund. So the one declares its total net income as a dividend, which is typical the REITs that you see nowadays, which most of the listed funds are. So they own a portfolio of buildings, they get rental income, it usually escalates every year, and whatever income they get, they distribute. So pension funds, people that want the income yield, they buy that stock. Then you get a more capital growth fund. There's not a lot of them. It's TAC was one, Pivotal was another one. There the people don't declare the income, they reinvest that. So they take the profits they make and then they reinvest it and they build up a portfolio. So your share is supposed to grow in value, but you don't receive a dividend. And that's the difference between the two funds. So the one declares 75% of his income, it's compulsory to do at least 75%. The other one don't have to declare, but they reinvest it and they build up. Obviously, with the second one, you need the skill of development. And so the first one, you only need to manage buildings. And the income funds usually buy buildings from developers. The capital growth fund they need the skill in-house. So they would develop their own buildings and keep that and hopefully grow in value. And that's the difference between
And then where did the Mall of Africa, on which side was that?
Mall of Africa, well, the whole of TAC was a capital growth fund, and it's going to change now to an income fund because they've got enough rental income and too little developments to spend it on. So they have to start declaring a dividend. So they're going to convert into a REIT or income fund. Mall of Africa was developed in the time where TAC was still a growth fund. And it's a joint venture between Atterbury, who are the developer, and the TAC, who was a listed fund.
Okay.
So Atterbury owns a stake of Mall of Africa. A TAC owns a stake, but the TAC will put that now in their income fund, or they will convert into income fund, declare a dividend to whoever the shareholders are, and Atterbury will retain its stake and remains a capital growth play.
Whose idea was the Mall of Africa?
Well, we acquired the land from the Mia family in 2008.
Yeah.
It's 300 hectares, and we decided to do almost an integrated city on the 300 hectares. Now, an integrated city needs a proper shopping center, offices, residential. So it was actually no one's specific idea. You have to do a shopping center if you want to do a city. So that's how it started.
So it was sort of, okay.
Yeah.
Let us take it right back to the very beginning. You studied locally in Pretoria. What did you study?
I did chartered accounting.
Okay, so you're an accountant. That's not development at all. That's quite interesting. How did you go from that into starting Atterbury? And take us through that journey, like starting up Atterbury. How did you get the money for that? How did you get the connections, going from accounting background into that?
It's actually the other way around. I always was in property.
Okay.
I was in school and in university when I bought stands and sold stands and bought student accommodation and rented out. So I was always interested in property.
Real hustler, yeah.
And to be honest, I didn't even have accounting at school. So I realized that if you need credibility to do a CA is a credible degree. So I decided to study chartered accounting to get the CA. I still struggle with accounting. So I studied that, and then I started with Deloitte's. But in the meantime, I was 100% busy with property, building townhouses and selling them, and I did 1 year of article at Deloitte, and then in that year I met Francois van Niekerk, who owned a company called Infotech, which is an IT company, and we got along well. And during that period, the Auditor General need new premises. I heard that via Deloitte, and I know they wanted to go to Brooklyn. So I took options on a whole block of houses. And then I went to Francois and said, will he back me to sign surety for that? Then we buy the houses, and we did a presentation to the Auditor General, and we built the building for them. And then I resigned from Deloitte. They didn't like the two hats that I wore. So I resigned from Deloitte, and at the same time we started Atterbury Value Mart. And so we decided to form a company together. And the name was actually, the first development was in Atterbury Road, Atterbury Value Mart. So we had a shell company which we called Atterbury Road Development, and then the name just stuck and it became Atterbury. Yeah.
Okay, you've mentioned options there. Tell us a bit about how options work for those entrepreneurs here that don't quite know what that actually is.
Let me go back one. I think if anybody asks me what is the, you must excuse my English, I'm not that fluent in English. If you, what's eienskap? The
ownership.
Nee, eienskap. Attribute. What's the biggest attribute of an entrepreneur? I say if you want to be an entrepreneur, you have to be able to sell. You know, people don't understand that always, but you have to sell yourself. You have to sell a product. You have to sell an idea. So if you can't sell, you can't be an entrepreneur. Now, option is you go to somebody and you convince him that you are going to buy his house, but certain things need to take place first. So you haven't got the money and you haven't got the tenant, but you must be so convincing that the guy believes you. Then he gives you an option on to buy his house at a certain price, and you have 3 months or 6 months or whatever, and in that period you get your ducks in a row. You have to find the funding, the tenant, and that's what the option is.
Okay.
So I knew I must sell myself, and I must sell the idea to Francois. Then we must sell the stands or the precinct to the Auditor General, and I must sell that firstly to the owners of those houses.
So do you have to go to every single one of those houses and go,
yeah,
hi, I'm going to be buying up this entire area. Can you please buy your home from you?
Yeah, and you pay a
and how many units were in there?
I can't remember. I think 10 or 12.
Okay.
It was sort of a block in Middle Street. And so I convinced them that they
should sell.
That they backed me. I told them it's a done deal. You know, I just need 3. So after selling to everyone, then you put the deal together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Woo, okay. This is how we roll entrepreneurship. Okay. Actually, yeah.
I think maybe something else there. Another attribute of a entrepreneur. The one is you must sell, and the other thing I always say to people in my life, I find two types of entrepreneurs. You get the guys, they are very good deal makers, but they always negotiate from a position of strength. So they either have the money, or they work at the bank, or they work for somebody that has the money. So a lot of people approach them and say, listen, let's say it's a bank. We want to borrow money, we want to build a house or do a development or whatever. Now that guy, because he has the money, he then structured a deal with the guy. He says, fine, I'll give you the money, but because you can't put down anything, we'll put down everything, but we want 20% or 50%. That's almost a bit easier because you negotiate from a position of strength. Then you get that guy that's approaching the bank. Now that's where I was when I approached Francois. You learn at a very early age to give something in order to make the deal happen, because you haven't got the money. So that guy, in order for him to lend you the money, there must be something in the deal for him on the table. You know, you get a profit share, or you get a higher interest rate, or the guy that gives you an option, there must be something in. He can sell his house at $1 million, but you offer him 1.2 because you're going to do this deal. And I found later in life that you come to a stage where you've got the money now, but you never forgot those, you know, what you've learned. And I think that's one of the reasons for Atterbury's success is, and you'll always see the people that we do deals with, they will always mention that if Atterbury does a deal with you, there's something in it for you as well. It's not a case of they got the money and they tell you this is it or leave it. And I think we're very good with partnerships, because that's a lesson we've learned from day one. So still today, most of our deals we do in partnership with the landowner or with the tenant or with whoever, because we understand to make it attractive for him in able to do the deal. And I think that helped us a lot in getting deals where, you know, if we compete, the Mia land is a very good example, you know, where we built Mall of Africa. We competed against Investec and Zenprop, and both of them were very rich property companies, and I mean, we weren't. And we were able, you know, I've listened to their pitches why they should get the deal, but it was all focused on themselves, you know, they this and that, and I think our pitch were completely different. We first started and say, what do you want? You know, the Mia family, it was the Islamic Institute, and I've realized that they want annuity income. They don't really want a big amount. They want to make sure that 200 years from now there's still money. So we structured the deal where there's an upfront amount, but they get a portion of the rental income, and they just liked it. You know, the other guys were so focused on what they can get out of the deal that they, and I saw that a lot of times. You know, when we do deals, is that you concentrate more on what the guy wants, and you make sure. You know, I always say to the people, if you come to the end of a 5-year term with a tenant, and now you have to negotiate another 5 years. Now, you can walk in and say, listen, your rental was 100 Rand, we're going to renew now and we want 110 Rand. Then immediately the other guy's on the back foot, because you've now said what you want, and now I usually do the opposite. I go in and I say to the guy, "You're here now for 5 years. What bothered you?" And the guy says, "No, I want signage on the building, or my aircon is not working, or whatever." Then you address all those problems. By the time you've addressed that, then you only got to, now we can renew, but yes, I can't make it work at 100. Can we have 110? But usually at that stage, the other person you've won so many things. Yeah. I mean, he's got his aircon now and the signage on the building, and you almost feel stupid not to give you your 110 rand. And it's the same thing again. You put yourself in another guy's shoe. You try and determine what is important to him. You answer that. So whether you want to get money from somebody or an option or a rental, that's a good lesson to learn, is put yourself in his shoes, think what is important, answer that, and only then you put your position on the table. And I think over the years that have worked for us.
Building up, you've had a lot of lessons and building up from a very young age, so you've gone through a lot and you've learned certain things. But have you ever felt that your next fund is going to be like a 3 billion property fund you're putting together, and when the stakes are so high, do you ever feel...
I'll be very disappointed if it's only 3 billion.
Well...
No,
okay, you know what I mean? The Deloitte deal.
Ad fund was, from 2002 to 2009, it was 9.5 billion at the end, and the TAC was listed at 12 or 13 billion. So 3 billion is not the target. I would want.
Okay, I read something anyway. Okay, but getting to that level, 12 billion rand. Do you ever feel like, oh my gosh, I'm going to make the wrong move and I'm going to lose it all?
I'm what? I'm
going to lose it all. I'm going to make the wrong move. No. Something's going to go wrong, and this is just all going to fall down.
No, I
confidence. Another attribute. I love it.
No, no. No, it's not. I don't mean it arrogant, but I never thought of yes, we're going to lose everything. Never. There's always. I think that's what makes South Africans good. You always have a plan. We. If the money is not there, then you make a plan to find somebody that puts in the money. I think that's what we're good at is resolving resolving problems. We quite active in Europe now, Eastern Europe, the last sort of 5-6 years, and I think that's the one thing that distinguishes South Africans from anyone else. Our biggest competition in Eastern Europe is other South Africans. You don't find anyone else there except South Africans, because they understand how to take a problem. Doing business in South Africa is incredible, the amount of problems you get to, from the government to local council to, and you always have to think a way around that. And I think that's a way of, I'll give you an example. We did a development in Scotland, in Edinburgh. Now we bought a piece of land and we wanted to do townhouses, but in any of the Western European countries, it takes you 8 years to get right. It's just a process that you don't want to start with. But what they do have, you automatically have rights for 60 units on a CBD site. So if you can fit 60 units in, you don't have to apply, they will give it to you because there's a shortage of housing. So we got this huge stand. So I said to the guy, so how many houses can we build? He says, you've got 60. So I said, but more, the stand is big, you can do. He says, no, sorry, that's the legislation. So I said, fine. So I said, what does it take to subdivide a site? They said, no, that's an easy process. So I said, so can I subdivide it into 3? He says, yes. So I said, well, let's do that. And then I want 60 per stand. So the guy sat there, he says, you didn't think that was the idea of but I said, can I do it or can't I do it? He says, no, technically you can, but that wasn't the idea. I said, no, well, let's do it then. Now, I think that's the way of thinking. Any other Scotsman would say, okay, there's my site, you'll build these 60 and then... But the South Africans always think of a different way of doing that, and I think that's what makes us successful. We can go wherever, and we find a solution. If there's a problem, we find a solution. In Atterbury, the culture is as well. The guys that work there, they understand that. I don't want to hear about a problem if the guy haven't got an answer. So if somebody comes and say, listen, we've got now this problem with the tenant. If he doesn't give me the answer with it, I don't want to listen to the problem. So it forces the people to immediately think of a solution to a problem.
So you're quite a tough boss, okay?
No, I'm not. But it's that's the way a company is successful by not only seeing. I use this example often. We did a retirement village, Kingswood, where I took an older guy to an apartment on the 6th floor. Now, it was a big site with kraglijnen, what power lines all across the site, and it obscures the view, but it's these power lines. So I took the old guy and I said to him, this specific apartment is a great apartment. Look at the view, but it's a pity about the power lines. I said to him. So he said to me, you know what? You can either choose to look at the power lines or choose to look at the view. So if you look at the power lines, you will always see that, and you'll never see the view. If you look at the view, you will never see the power lines. And that is that's the philosophy. I mean, that's the philosophy. We try at Atterbury not to see the power lines, but to see the view. And if you see the view, I mean, you will always find a way around it.
What is your biggest failure?
I think there was a stage in 26, 27, where the whole, just before this whole crisis with the residential properties all over the world, what happened is the banks, I don't know if they had more foresight than we did, but they sat with opportunities, most of them residential, where they weren't happy with whoever developed that or was busy with that. So they came to us and saying, you know what, we like you, you're a big company. So the biggest failure was our ego got into the way, so you start believing the banks. Then they say to you, we'll borrow you the money, or lend you the money. No, that's reg, lend. We'll lend you the money to take this guy out. And you don't have to put in a cent, just sign. So they replaced the weaker clients with better clients. So we bought all these things, you don't have to pay a cent, you own all these properties, and then a year later, everything fell apart. And now you sit with all these properties where you sign sureties. And that happened to us in that period. So our biggest failure was, I think, where we got a bit ahead of ourselves, ventured into big residential schemes which we shouldn't have, just because the bank told us that we were great and we can't do anything wrong. And we believed that and signed. And we ended up having to fork out the money. And I mean, that put us back quite a bit, and I think it was a bit of arrogant, we thought we could do it and we couldn't.
And has there ever been a time, I mean, actually I know there's been a time, pretty few of them, but where you've had stacks raising up, everything was getting to a point, and then everything was about to fall down, nothing was going to happen, and then lastminute.com, you managed to find that fund or the thing. What great story have you got? Tell us about it.
When we bought the land from the Mias, we didn't have the money to pay for it. So we paid a portion. and the rest of that, we gave them shares in Atterbury. And they said, and I said to them, as we get money over time, we will buy the shares back. We will give them all their money, but this is the sort of the surety. And they wanted a put option on the shares, which means that at any stage they can force us to buy the shares from them. But they said, don't worry, they're long-term players. They won't do that if we keep paying. So, and we kept paying them. And then one day they walked in and they say, well, we're putting on you. Because the agreement said that if we can't pay them, then within 6 months, they can take back the land. And I sort of believed them that they wouldn't put the shares, but they did. So now we had a problem. And I remember that afternoon, they put the morning, and that afternoon I flew down to Sandam. I knew Johan van der Merwe and Johan van Sail. It's the same guys that's running ARC now for Patrice Motsepe. Johan van Sail was the rector at Tax, so he was a friend of my father's before he went to Sandam, and Johan van der Merwe was head of Sandam Investments, and we had a business at Varsity together, and we articled at Deloitte together. So I flew down that Monday afternoon. I said to them, I need, and I think the amount, I can't remember, it was 300 or 600 million. We needed...
Just need 600 million, don't worry about it. Almost $1 billion, but it's fine.
But remember, at that stage, we had our property portfolio, but we need that money, otherwise we lose the Mia land. Yeah. And I saw them that afternoon, 2 o'clock, and the next morning the money was in the bank. We haven't signed the agreement, they said, fine, here's the money, we will take shares in Atterbury. We long-term players, we don't want to put. So I basically replaced the Mias with Sandam, and to give you an idea, at that stage, the shares, it was a TAC, was 4 or 5 rand, and 3 or 4 years later, they listed those shares at 18 rand or 16 rand. I can't remember what the TAC listed. So they made good money out of that.
So,
And the Mia's got the money, and they could have had the shares in Atterbury and made a lot more, but they...
So in other words, keep your friends around you.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question here. Do you think property is an accessible industry for newcomers, and how would you recommend young people enter the capital-intensive property development world? That's a very good question.
Yeah, it's very difficult to get into commercial property or industrial property. I think what I see now, the young guys that start afresh, they either do residential, where you can afford to buy a house in Hatfield and convert it into a commune and get that rental income and buy a second one until you got 4 of them, and then you demolish and build student houses. So you have to start that way. Or these storage units. I saw a couple of guys who bought a plot, and because it's fairly cheap to construct, easy to rent out. So the guys that's doing the inner city, the Mabonengs and Arcadia, there as well. I mean, you can buy an old building for fairly little money, convert it, and find the tenant. So is it difficult to get into property? I think it depends in what you want to get. If you think you're going to start with a shopping center or office building, it is difficult. If you take baby steps and buy the first house, try and buy 4 houses next to each other while it's a commune. You then apply for the rights to build student apartments, and then when you've got that, then only you demolish and you start. That you can do, because the moment you've got the site and you've got equity in that, you've got value, then you will get people that will invest with you. There's a lot of people that are backing people that's building student houses, or I've seen a lot of young guys that got the idea, and they got somebody that's prepared to put in $1 million or 2 million, say, listen, build it, and I'll either take apartments, or we sell it, or we let it. But I think that's a way of
what if I don't
involved.
have that someone that I can go to that can lend me the 2 million? How do I find that person?
Well, you have to be.
And how do I create?
You have to sell. You have to sell your idea. You have to sell yourself. That's the only way you can do it. And there's enough people with money. It depends on.
Got to find them.
We had people that come to us with ideas that we bought, and others that don't. I mean, it depends on. So if you think you're an entrepreneur, you must find the person with the money.
Everybody had a hustle sometime. If you were to buy a commercial property, where in Pretoria would you purchase? I'm pretty sure this is one of your competitors, but
you want to buy commercial
property.
Commercial as in offices.
Yeah.
I would buy close to the N1. I would buy either side of the N1, Menden, that area. I think.
For commercial.
That's commercial, yeah. I either next to a Gautrain station, very close to walking distance, or in the east of Pretoria. I wouldn't buy anywhere else.
And residential,
No, residential. It depends. It depends in what bracket you play. You can in the inner city. There's a lot of good property deals. Because there's a huge demand. You rent apartments out for 3,000 or 4,000, 2,500 rand a month, but there's a huge demand. You can go to the east of Pretoria where you charge 15,000 rand if you've got the money for that. But residential is not. There's not a specific area. It depends. What's your focus market? Do you go low income? Do you go high income? And there's a good market in any one of them.
Any questions on the crowd? There's one right at the back. Please, this is on video, so if you don't mind speaking in the microphone, and if somebody can just, here we go. Thank you very much. There you go. Jaco, jy is nou die microphone guy, so you can run around with it.
Is it on? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, it's might be a bit wayward, but as an entrepreneur, you move into life and you come across some interesting characters. What is your red light moment? Soos wat is jou groot or your big moment where you decide, no, this is not going to happen? So obviously you have your quantifiables, you can calculate risk and do all the fun stuff, but if that guy's sitting in front of you, what's that thing that just makes that bell ring?
It pretty much depends on the personality of the person. I don't like people that oversell. That nothing can go wrong, and you get a gut feel for a person, and I usually back a person, not necessarily the idea or the. So I think that to me is very important. Who's the person sitting in front of you? Can you trust him? Can you get a good feeling about him? That to me is very important. And then something else, it wasn't me that said it. I'm just repeating it. But and I can't even remember who said it. But he says, if you take a boat that's in the water, if the boat gets a hole below the waterline, it will sink. Above the waterline, you can fix it. It's temporary. Now, the one lesson I've learned over life is never to do something that can cause a hole below the waterline. I will never take a risk that's so big that it can sink the whole company. That's your question. So the bigger the company is, the easier it is to find deals, because you won't find as big a deal that will sink the company. But I will never put the company on risk at a deal that if it goes wrong, the whole company goes down. A certain portion, or you can take a knock, but never the company. So if you know what your waterline is, never take a risk below the waterline. Always take it above the waterline.
That's very cool. I like that. Somebody quote that. Tweet that. Come on, guys. Tweet it. Start PTA.
But don't say I said it, because I've heard it.
Thanks, Jaco. Okay, any other questions? Okay, there's at the back there.
Another good quote. I was in I was overseas yesterday, and a guy from Romania said to me, they've got a saying there, and what it was about, he's busy with a deal, but he doesn't want anyone to know about it. He says they got a saying, a cat with jingles never catch a mouse. And that's very true. If you walk and talk the whole time, you'll never do a deal. And so he said to me, let's keep quiet, because a cat with jingles never catch a mouse. And I thought that was a very cool.
That's very good.
Cool saying.
Okay.
Hi. So I've seen some pop-ups on there by the Millionaires Club, by Waterfall Corner, and they're on the other side of Butler Interchange, there by Cell-C, by Baldwin Properties. So I just wanted to know if you are in partnership with them as Atterbury, or are they just purely development opportunities for other property developers there? And if there are there opportunities for less prominent property developers other than Baldwin? Because Baldwin, I know they are backed by big business as well. And if there are, what is the procedure of then going in?
Firstly, that's a TAC. So you must remember, I'm with Atterbury. A TAC now owns all that land, and they're doing those developments. Atterbury jointly develop with them, but they partner with other property developers. For instance, Baldwin or Atterbury or whoever. So your question must be more be directed at a TAC. Would they partner anyone, or only big balance sheet people? Knowing them, I don't think they will partner with a startup company, because they would expect the company to have the money to pay for the land, at least. So let's say there's a stand, and the stand is worth 2 million rand. They would put in the stand for 2 million, but they would expect the development partner to then put in 2 million of cash to match that, and then they will do a joint development. So I think if you have the money to partner with them, they would be happy to do that, and if they like the idea. So I don't think it's only big developers that they will target, but they wouldn't partner someone where they have to put all the financial risk, put in the land and put the money. And I think that, but again, that is a TAC. It's a question you must direct to them. Remember, when we listed a TAC, Atterbury moved away from a TAC. So I can't really answer on their behalf.
Okay, cool. I saw a hand over here. Here we go. Can you just pass the microphone to him, please? Thank you.
Good evening, sir. I'm interested in your opinion. In the United States, apparently there's a crisis in the retail sector, because more and more consumers are moving to internet shopping, and more malls are now not getting that foot traffic anymore. Do you foresee that becoming a problem in South Africa as internet access grows?
We've done quite a bit of homework on that, and funnily enough, South Africa, same as Eastern Europe, which is also emerging market, is way behind first world markets, and I think the reason is, so the short answer is, it will be a problem, but not in the foreseeable future. Not in a South Africa or emerging market, which we think Eastern Europe is. I think, and maybe I can use a different example to explain it. You all know We Buy Cars. Now, in America, there's a We Buy Cars as well. And if you go to those lots, or where they sell those cars, it will be 4 or 5 soccer fields full of cars standing out in the open, because the American customer wants to feel he's buying a bargain. He want to go there, but the moment he feels expensive, he's not interested. He want to buy a bargain. In South Africa, if you go to We Buy Cars, it's a very fine showroom with nice lights, and they give you a coffee. And because the South African customer, it's an aspirational buy. You know, a lot of them, it's the first time they buy a car. So they want to feel good about the investment. They don't want a bargain. They don't want to buy the car somewhere where it feels cheap. It won't feel expensive. Now, and I think that's the difference between a first world country and an emerging market like South Africa. And the same applies to shopping. If you have a lot of alternatives for, what you can do with your time, and then it's not an issue to buy over the internet. If you come to a South Africa or a Eastern Europe country, going to a shopping center is an outing. It's an aspirational thing. You want to go there. You want to be seen there. So there's a lot. In America, it's purely buying something, and in the first world countries, because they've got a lot of other things that they can do. In South Africa and other emerging markets, that's still a big issue to go to a shopping center and be there with your friends. And so I think it's a different, one is to fulfill a need. In America, the guy wants a new jeans, so he's going to buy it. In South Africa, it's part of what you aspire to do. You work hard for your money, so you can go the weekend and you can go watch a movie. And so the culture is different, and I think it will take a long time for us to get to a first world country where it's not an issue to go to. And if you speak to Steinhoff, for instance, they've got retail stores all over the world. They've got in America now, Western Europe, Eastern Europe. They experience exactly the same. The internet shopping in the first world countries, in America, Western Europe, is growing tremendously. But in the other countries, the emerging markets, people want to go to the shop and they want to see the thing and they want to buy it there. And so their opinion is as well, they're investing in this internet shopping, first world countries, but not as much in I don't want to say third world countries, I want to say emerging markets, because that's where I think we classify ourselves. I think that's sort of my short answer.
Okay, there's that one, him first, and then, yeah.
Hello. Question is linked to what he said about the slowing trend in the demand for shopping centers and big developments. I want to know from you, what do you think is the next frontier for the property development sector in South Africa? I know it's quite long term, because
I think inner city.
Inner city.
I think we are investing more and more in inner city developments. I think that's where the demand is. And everything from offices to residential to retail. So it's
like a mixed use in a city.
I think Maboneng is a very good example.
Okay.
If you take Newtown, Maboneng, I think there's, if you ask me where's the growth in South Africa, it's definitely there. I think the big shopping centers in the, let's call it the outside the big metropoles, I think that's saturated. It's going to be a struggle to build another Mall of Africa. But to build that in inner city, I think that's, if I were a new property guy in South Africa, I would focus more on that than on commercial offices or big shopping centers. And there's a couple of young startup companies that have done that, and they're doing very well. There's some of them sitting here.
So some nice opportunities.
Yeah.
One more?
Yeah.
Okay, go first, yeah. This microphone, please. Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
Okay. Sorry about that. What about the townships? In terms of, okay, let me give you a bit of context. I come from a spatial planning background.
From
spatial planning, right. Town planning.
Right.
So the townships have so much potential, I think, because that's the market. That's where you have a huge chunk of your market. So what about the townships? Are you guys looking at those areas maybe as future cities and as places where...
We like the townships close to the big metropoles. I mean, we've just done a deal on the Pan Africa Mall in Alex, the big one at the taxi rank. So if it's a township next to one of the major cities, we will invest there. But would I do a township in Winterveld? No, I won't. I don't think the growth will ever be there. So we will focus on townships if it's very close, Mamelodi or close to Pretoria, we will do. But I'd rather invest in the inner city. And the reason is simple. In the inner city, you can still acquire buildings at a very cheap price. You can buy a office building that's not used anymore at 2,000 or 3,000 rand per square meter. To construct that will cost you 10,000 or 12,000 rand a square meter. Whether you construct it there or in the township, it's going to cost you 12,000 rand a square meter. So I'd rather take a 2,000 rand a square meter building which I bought and convert it into something. My return is just much bigger, and the demand is as big in the inner city as it is in the townships. So I think the opportunity is there because there's a lot of vacant buildings that you can acquire at a very low price, and if you're creative, you can convert it into something that will give you a very good income yield. In the township, there's not something that you convert. You have to build it yourself, and that's expensive. And that's why I like the inner city more than a township. Or, for that matter, it doesn't even have to be a township, whether you go to Ferry Glen or not. I think the opportunity at the moment is more inner city. I mean, if you look at Mashaba in Joburg, he publicly declared that there's 90 buildings that he want to give now to developers in the inner city to convert. Now you're going to get that for free, you know. So if your idea is right, the market is there. You know, one thing that I haven't realized, and I mean, I've sort of learned it now that we start getting involved there. You know, you go to Maboneng, for instance, you'll find an 18 square meter apartment with its own bathroom, a little kitchen, and then it's just an open plan, and it rents for 2,500-3,000 rand. Now I've spoke to the guy that's renting it. He says to me his alternative is a shack in Alex or in Soweto, who's not much cheaper, but he's got transport costs. You know, so he will rent a shack for 2,000 rand or 2,500 rand, but his transport costs him another 1,000 or 1,500 rand. Now he's in the city, he's in a building with security, he's got his own bathroom, his own kitchen. Usually those guys that develop them, Perpetuity is a very good developer in Maboneng. They would provide for that block of apartments a kiddies area, a kiddies play area, a place where you can mingle. So now you get all of that, plus you don't have to pay transport costs for exactly the same amount as you renting something in Soweto. So that is why they've got a waiting list like this for those apartments. As the guys move out, the new ones move in. And I think that's a very big opportunity. We start getting involved in that now. And it's in the beginning it was foreign to us. I mean, I didn't understand it, but the more I get involved with that, the more I realize that that's a proper business.
Louis, thank you for your insights so far. My question revolves around, you mentioned earlier that you are, Atterbury is in Eastern Europe and specifically in Romania. I'd be interested to hear which other countries or regions Atterbury is focusing on, either within SA or perhaps overseas, and why.
We've opened recently offices in Stellenbosch just because a lot of money is moving there. You know, a lot of people is scared of living in Pretoria and Joburg, and they're moving down to the Western Cape. So we want to go into that market. So we've opened offices there, and we've been very successful. We've done a big shopping center in Namibia, and we're doing a second one now, which is, and then in Africa we've got quite a bit. We got burnt there. We've got 4 shopping centers in Ghana, 1 in Nigeria, 1 in Zambia. But the commodities, you know, the gold, copper, oil, you know, unfortunately those economies goes with that. You know, so if that goes, your investment doesn't perform well. We've done quite a bit in Mauritius, where we've been very successful. We've built a big shopping center there. We're doing another one now. Cyprus, you know, Cyprus after the sort of the plunge it took, you know, after the crisis there, we went in and bought 2 shopping centers. We're increasing now. So there's always opportunities. You know, there's you have to keep your eye open. We like developing in the same time zone, you know, plus or minus 1 or 2 hours. I wouldn't go to Australia or America. It's just too inconvenient. But going up and down is not, as I said, I mean, I was in Germany yesterday. I landed this morning, you carry on. You know, it's not, but if I go to Australia, it takes you 2 days and 2 days to recover, and so we don't like that.
Keep it
and
simple.
then as well, you know, countries, I mean, I've been to Angola, for instance, but it's not a country I like. You know, Nigeria the same. I don't like it there, you know, so I wouldn't want to expose the Atterbury people to that, so we say no to developments there. Just because not so that South Africa is much better now, but the corruption there and you just don't want to do it. You know, you don't want to, and I mean, if we don't change things in South Africa soon, we're going to go the same route. And I think that's why we have started investing in other places. But you know, it's your choice where you want to do business. You know, we do business where it's nice to do business. I'm not going to do business where I don't like the area.
So, on a completely different note, what would take us through your average day in terms of what your morning routine is? How do you start your day and get going into things?
How early do I have to start? No, I wake up fairly early. I go
5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7.
Yeah, it's sort of 5:30. I'm at the office at around about 7 o'clock.
Brush your teeth, do the shower.
Then nowadays my day is more sort of solving problems and doing new deals. I mean, that's what I focus on. So I would, in the office there's different divisions, so whatever there's a problem, they would come and bounce it off me. You know, they run into this thing
With a solution attached.
with a solution. Usually the solution is wrong, but at least they come with one.
But at least they tried.
Yeah,
That's
so
right.
at least they try. So that's one big portion, and then finding new deals. You know, doing whether it's a tender or seeing a client. That's sort of what my main focus is: finding new business and trying to resolve issues. I think those are the two things I focus on, and then I usually work till about 6 o'clock. I would say. You know, I don't like working at home. A lot of people work at home, but I don't. You know, I'm to be honest, I'm very tired in the evening, so I go to sleep early. I mean, my wife and kids watch TV, and sometimes 9 o'clock I'm asleep. You know, and I'm genuinely tired. That's sort of my day. But it's nice. It's you know, the people joke I don't have an office. You know, at our offices. So I've got a boardroom and I walk around, but I don't have a thing where I sit behind a desk. I don't have a computer, for instance. You know, I've got an iPad and I never work on a computer because that's not my work. You know, I'm not good at that and I don't like doing that, so I don't do it. No.
Get the right people to do it for you. One question over there.
Thanks, Louis. I just quickly want to find out, so clearly you're very good at what you do, and you've shown through your track record that you're extremely successful in everything you do. Now that you've done it all, you've done just about every single deal, obviously there's still excitement every time you finish and close a deal, but does it ever get to a point where you feel like, I've been here before, I've done exactly this type of deal? And when you get to that point, what are the things that give you more purpose, that keep you going to continue to drive harder?
Funny enough, you know, whether you sign a tenant for 50 square meters or you do Deloitte's new head office of 50,000 square meters, it's the same excitement. You know, I've seen that I like doing deals, whether it's small or big. I'm interested in that. So I haven't reached a point where deal making is boring. I have reached a point in the running of a company where you don't want to sit with personnel issues anymore. But I think, you know, at a very early stage, when there's something you're not good at, you get people that are good at that. So I didn't do things, you know, I appointed a guy once, any rugby followers, you might remember him, Johan Roots. He played fullback for the Bulls. Extremely good personality, and he does our sort of leasing, but his admin is horrible. And I've realized that he spends so much time trying to sort out his admin that he's not playing to his strength. So I said to him, you don't have to do admin. Let's get somebody that likes doing admin, because you do. You get people that loves organizing things. So
Crazy people.
Yeah.
Crazy, yeah. Absolutely mad.
So the point I'm trying to make is, if you do what you like, you know, Johan Roots like leasing. He likes also selling and leasing, and he's still not bored with that. But if I forced him to do his own admin, he would have got tired. And same applies to me, same applies to a lot of people. So I think it's important to find what keeps a person, you know, interested, and let him focus on that, and not force somebody to do something that he doesn't like, because that's when you get bored and tired and looking for a new job. You know, a good story, there's also a nice quote. Unfortunately, this is Tiger Woods. I must at some stage find my own quotes. He was in an interview where they had these rankings. You know, in the world, you're number 10 in putting and 3 in this and that. Now, Tiger was sort of number 1, 2, 3 in everything: putting, driving, irons, everything except sand shots. He was like number 15. So the interviewer said to him, so you're going to focus now on your sand shots? So he says, no. He says, I'm going to focus on my iron shots to go from number 3 to 1 that I don't hit in the sand. Then I don't have to worry about sand shots.
Don't have to worry
No,
about
it's the same principle. If you play to your strengths, you don't have to worry about your weaknesses because you never experience them. And that's what I've seen in the company. You must get people and find out what they like, and that's where you appoint them and apply them. That then you've got a successful company. It's when you have to do things that you don't like that it doesn't work.
We had a question over there. Okay, at the back there. Can you just run the mic around to him? Thank you so much. There we go.
Thank you. In hindsight and retrospect, have you always known that it was going to be property? And would you still have gone this route that you've gone? And if it wasn't property, what is another industry that excites you? And
Well, yeah, I always thought it was property. I liked it since I was young. Maybe I would have studied quantity surveying and not chartered accounting. You know, I sometimes lack that experience, and I think the QSs understand enough of finances to be able to feel that as well. Other things, I'm fairly big involved in farming, game farming, cattle farming. But I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. It's not I always say you need a place where you can lose your money, so that's farming. but I like it. I mean that's sort of that's my other passion: property and farming.
Actually, the question is: are you involved in other sectors besides property, so farming, property? But do you have anything else that you?
Yeah, I'm involved with a private company called Fletch. We own a stake in. We buy cars, and we bought a stake in Dis-Chem before they listed a couple of years ago, and for you guys that know Safari and Outdoor, we're involved in that as well, and I can't even remember, there's a couple of investments that we've got. We had a feedlot outside Pretoria, Better Bond, we're involved in that. So it's purely non-property, and I'm only a passive investor in there. So there's a very good team looking for investments, investing in there. But that's purely to diversify it. I wouldn't say it's my interest. You know, it's opportunities that come. I mean, Dis-Chem was opportunity that came to me because of property. You know, I got along well with Ivan Zaltzman, the starter, and he asked me to get involved there. But it's not a property play, so I think it's good to diversify. Farming is a big expense, so I wouldn't say that's a diversification. I mean, that's really.
Would you ever invest in tech?
No. Oh, well, shit, we have. This same company is invested in a tech company that does things for municipalities, Minsoft. But I would try and stay away from things that I don't understand, and I'm not a tech guy. You know, I don't have a computer. So, if the investment people can, in a logical way, explain to me why it makes sense, then I would invest. But I wouldn't try and fund a startup IT thing. I've no.
Absolute hustler to hustle you hard. Okay, it's fine. We'll chat to you afterwards. Okay. What is the most difficult partnership, business relationship you have had to handle, and how did you resolve any issues?
Most difficult.
It doesn't mean most difficult, but
yeah. I think the Eastern European partnerships, because you can't go to those countries on your own, so you will have to find a local partner, and we did in Serbia, in Romania, even in Cyprus, and you know it's difficult to merge with those cultures. You know they, in yesterday, I mean, it's a good example. So we've got an agreement, we're buying now into a thing, we have to pay X amount then. Okay, now in South Africa, I mean, that's the deal. So you have to pay. Now the guy says, so what if you don't pay? What's the penalty? But I am going to pay. I mean, that's why we're here. That's why we do. Yeah, no, but he wants to know if you don't pay. Then he's got a massive penalty. I mean, he wants to come and shoot your wife or whatever. You know, but that's the way they are. You know, it's not that if you don't pay, we dilute your interest. Then you must give your shares back, and we're not going to refund you. And this, and you sit there and you say to the guy, but that's the business environment there. You know, so it's a bit difficult for us. No one in South Africa have ever mistrusted me if I say we're going to do this and this. Then it's agreement, so you're going to do it. These guys, the fact that it's agreement is irrelevant. They want to know if you don't do it, what can they then do to you? You know that. So those, and it takes a couple of years before they get comfortable, and so that's difficult. It's difficult to partner with a different culture who comes from a complete different background. It's same. I mean, in South Africa, if you take how difficult it is for a white person who comes from a certain background to partner with a black guy who comes from a township. I mean, it's just difficult. It's not what's onvoorkombaar. I mean, it's not impossible. It's not impossible, but it takes time. It takes you long to understand the issues, and there's genuine issues from both sides. But you're so fixated on your thing and that guy, and he said that it's very difficult at the end to force a partnership. If it doesn't come natural over time, it never works. And so if you ask me what's the most difficult, I think it's partnership from different cultures. And we've succeeded in all of them, but it takes time. It's much easier to partner with a guy that went to the same school as you and understands you than partner with somebody from a different culture. But you have to do that in order to move forward, and I think that's a difficult one. And I think like any deal where I say you have to listen to the other guy. That's a problem that I see. You get these two, you get a white guy and a black guy, and each one has his own problems, but they don't really listen to the other problem. So you want to satisfy all these fears and these problems, and the same on that side. But nobody say, you actually got a point. Let's see how we can address that. But listen to this point of mine. And the moment you start doing that, then it works. If you don't do it, it doesn't work. And I think that's difficult in partnership.
Okay, final question. Sorry, guys. Okay, final two questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, going over time.
Thank you. My name is Sam. By the way, congratulations on the beautiful business you are doing. You are making South Africa look like Dubai, at least once in Midrand. My question, you partly answered me before I asked. The transformation imperative, working with, as a BE company, I need to know how are you there? Are you transformed as Atterbury? And what is your level? What is your opinion about the future of the country with transformation? The future of the country with transformation as a need. In your own opinion, honest opinion, are we heading towards a brighter future? You partly answered, but not intercultural. I need it in the context of black economic empowerment, transformation. As we know, it is a compliance requirement. And just give us an insight on what made you successful in that area.
You will find that I'm always very honest, so I'll answer this honest. I think the black economic empowerment as the government wants to do it is not right. I believe 100% in empowerment, but I don't think it's color-based. You will see as many poor white people as you see poor black people, and I think it's necessary to empower that. And to think that it's purely based on color, I think is wrong. So I don't support that. Do we do a lot of empowerment? Yes, we do. We do empowerment where empowerment is necessary. Do we do empowerment the way government wants us to do that? Definitely not. Nobody will ever convince me by giving a Patrice Motsepe a stake in our business helps empowerment. I'd rather give it to somebody that needs it, and that's what we do. So, in Atterbury, we've got a foundation that gives bursaries to studies to poor people, irrespective of whether they're white or black. It's if they're poor and they want to study, we give a bursary, and we do interviews. Now, to come to your second, that's my opinion. Now, you sit in South Africa with a certain dispensation. There's black transformation, there's a BE rules. We're currently busy with a group in Johannesburg, which I've met, funny enough, through farming. Tebogo Magashua is a big game farmer. We've met a couple of years ago and we got along well. And we're in the process now, the Atterbury Property Fund, trying to achieve about a level 4 BE rating. We're doing an equity deal now with him, but again, not for the show. We're doing a real equity deal. So he and his team gets involved in the company. What I always say to him, Atterbury is a very Afrikaans culture company. He's got a completely different company, and I don't want him to change his culture, and I'm not changing my culture. But together, we actually getting along well. So there's certain areas that he look after. There's certain areas that I look after, and. So within the next sort of 3 months, we hope to conclude the deal whereby a big portion of Atterbury our fund will be transferred to Tallis Holdings, is his company, and on all levels there will be empowerment. But I feel that is genuine empowerment. not the way that I've seen a lot of empowerment transactions, which just plain doesn't work, and that's my field. So yes, I do believe in empowerment, but I believe it's for people who have not, and obviously 90% of that, due to our history, is black people. But to exclude certain people just based on color, I don't agree with that.
Cool, thank you. And then there we go.
My name is Renee, and I started a gap year program a few years ago. And in my research and my experience, I've seen young people still think that education is going to either buy them freedom, or they think because of media they don't have to go and study because they are going to work from their garage and make a lot of money. So last year someone approached me and we started looking at entrepreneurial thinking, and it's something that I want to focus on more to help young people think different. And I was just wondering, what advice can you give me that I can pass on to young people to think out of the box? Because I think people are born entrepreneurs. Can you make someone an entrepreneur? And how do you stimulate the right kind of thinking?
Well, let's first, I would never advise somebody not to study if it's possible. I think if somebody can get an education, or you can help somebody to get the education, that's always the first prize. But that's not the only way forward. As you rightly say, I don't think everybody's an entrepreneur. That unfortunately I've seen too many. But I would try and latch onto somebody that's clearly an entrepreneur. So I wouldn't advise anyone, irrespective of you're an entrepreneur, go and do whatever you want. But there's enough people around you with good ideas that need support that you can almost latch onto. And that's where I think if you don't have the, let's say, the ability to study, or the money, or the whatever to go and study further, I would try and identify people with a good idea, if I'm not an entrepreneur myself, and latch onto that and see if you can make that specific business strong. And you see that everywhere. We're helping a guy now with a car wash. It's in our new offices, there was a guy that intrigued me. He was a car guard, and I walked past him one day and he said to me, Mr. Van der Walt, I saw your Dis-Chem listing went well. I said, what? He says, no, he read in the newspaper. And so I said to him, yeah, but it can't be true. There's not a lot of people that know I'm involved in that. Here's a car guard and he tells me, yeah, your Dis-Chem listing. So I start talking to him and I realized, but this guy is interested in business. And now in our new development, I went to him and I say, listen, we always wanted to have a car wash in our developments. It's very convenient if you're there with your car, somebody can wash it to you. So we've built a car wash now, and we've sent him now on a course, and he now employed a couple of his mates, all car guards, but they all are now helping him, and they're running this car wash business. And that's why I say you don't have to be. He's the entrepreneur, but not necessarily his friends. I don't even know where they come from. All over, they sort of met there, and this guy, I think he's from Winterveld or Soshanguve or somewhere, but he had these guys. Now all of them, all of a sudden, he's working for him. So he's the entrepreneur. He convinced me to support him, and immediately those guys latch onto that. And I think that's the way. Everybody can't be an entrepreneur. But if you keep your eyes open, you will always find these guys, and if you back them and you with them, then it helps. That's how I would do it.
Thank you very much. All right. Cool, we got some competition. It's the business card competition. And then, there we go, there it is. All right, so some business, wow, a lot of business cards in here. You can pick one out.
Toby Low, Executive Director,
Toby Low,
Medicoop, CFI. What's CFI? Chief Financial Investor or what?
No, that's a cooperative bank. Medical cooperative bank.
But what does CFI stands for?
Cooperative Financial
Institution. Yeah. Okay.
There we go, so you can take a photograph with...
Nice to be low.
Yeah.
There we go.
Thanks.
Good meeting you. Yeah.
Nice meeting you.
There you go, and take a photograph. There we go.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, have you got it? Okay, and then Louis, for your time, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank
All
you.
the insights. So that's
Thanks
for
a
you.
lot.
So there we go. Thank you very much.